Welcome to Silicon Valley Impact, where business insight meets startup innovation. And now, Brian Sparks!
All right, Brian, then you are hearing correctly. Thank you.
Brian was a little late today.
It's still early here on the West Coast, but welcome to Silicon Valley Impact on Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos and beyond. What you're about to hear is edited for radio. I'm your host, Brian Sparks, and on the controls is Brian Bernasconi.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
It's nice to be here today.
Yes, do not correct your radio. You are hearing two Brians. The purpose of this show is to have honest conversations about what it takes to build great businesses and communities so that you can make an impact within your own. With that being said, we have a full house today. Brian, we're going to have a fun conversation. We're definitely got some energy in the room today.
Absolutely. No, it's been fun even just getting set up. We've already had a full show just laughing amongst ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
which I appreciate.
You can download the outtakes on Spotify.
There's one right there.
Yeah, there's one right there. But let me welcome in our guests again, superstars in the room. We have Shawn Flynn. Shawn, good to see you, buddy.
Brian, thanks for having me here.
All right. We have Dariusz of Rocket Vodka. Dariusz, good to see you.
Hello.
I've been trying to get you in here for a while, and we finally made it happen.
Some texts back and forth.
Can
you come now? No.
Yes, can't have it. And of course, we have an amazing guest. We have Edward Sullivan. Edward, good to see you. Author of Leading with Heart. Can you?
Edward, 1 second.
See, that is the
beauty of live radio.
The beauty of
Edward is there. Edward, you're being introduced, and I've had I had our microphone muted, so now you are here. Edward looks like he just kind of joined the conversation, Brian.
So let me bring you up to speed. So Edward, once again, Edward Sullivan, good to see you. Author of Leading with Heart. We're just giving little light introductions. Edward, thanks for having us on the West Coast. You're calling in. Usually we have everybody in the audience, but Edward's
in New York City, by the way.
Yeah.
I am. Great to meet you all.
Good to see you all. So let's start with a little round robin introduction. Shawn, I'll begin with you. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the startup ecosystem and what we have to look forward to today.
Should I do my little
do your doggy thing? Yeah. Do your dog and pony. The analogy of the mergers and acquisitions. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm an investment banker, focused on mergers, acquisition, growth capital. Most people have no idea what that is when I tell them that's what I do. So think of it this way. You go through life hand in hand with that special someone. 2 equals become 1. You get married. Well, that's a merger. Now you're walking in the park together, hand in hand. You'd see a little puppy. You go, oh my gosh, I want to take this little puppy. I want to bring it into my family. I want to acquire this puppy through an acquisition. Now the house, it's bigger. There's more love. But that puppy, it needs to go to the vet. It needs shots. It needs food. It needs all these things to go from this little puppy to this big dog. Well, it needs money. It needs growth capital. So all those transactions that happen in life, I help businesses with those all day long. That's all I do. Focus on the mid-market. I also do a little bit of secondaries, but that's what I do day to day.
Nice. And you also have an award-winning podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I have a podcast called The Silicon Valley Podcast. Very creative name. We're on episode 240-ish right now. I've got to interview people such as Melody Perkins, founder of Canva, Jim McKelvey, co-founder of Square, an author of this book, Leading with Heart. I'm not sure if Edward, you know John Bard. You might know him. He was on the podcast. And Brian Sparks was on it a while back as well. So I've gotten a couple of who's who of Silicon Valley on the podcast over the years.
It's no wonder you've got awards for that show. The lineup you've had is amazing.
Thank you.
All right, Dariusz, give us a little insight into your company that you're building up.
So we are doing something very different here in Silicon Valley. We're making vodka.
Not something usually here. Yeah.
But to elaborate on that, I've been a CMO for a long time. I've been in Silicon Valley for over 25 years, and I've worked on almost every imaginable product: search, speech, cybersecurity, data and AI more recently. And my day job, I'm a CMO, so I do that. But I've also been working on this startup called Rocket Vodka. It's a vodka from 100% apples. We're using my dad's apple moonshine formula and trying to launch a startup with it. Started in my garage in Menlo Park. But the best part about it has been, as a marketer, it's just been such a fun challenge and keeps me fresh as a marketer too.
And we're going to get all the insights on how you're doing that. And of course, with Edward here and Shawn here, we'll ask you questions, because a lot of our audience are startup founders and probably want to know that they're not alone, and that there are probably some tricks that we can hack in order to kind of win the startup game. All right. And so, of course, I want to look to Edward, who is coming in from the East Coast. Good to see you, Edward. Give a little intro to our audience about what you're up to.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much. And Darius, I'm going to ask you later why Apple Moonshine did not end up being the name of that product. But Edward Sullivan calling in from New York City. I live in Manhattan part of the year and Santa Barbara part of the year. I'm CEO of Velocity Coaching, and we are one of the top CEO founder coaching firms in Silicon Valley, New York. We've got 30 coaches around the world, and we work with companies ranging from Series A startups you haven't heard of to companies that have recently IPO'd, like DoorDash and Sweetgreen. And we've also been working with Masterclass. A couple of years ago, the CEO of Geico called me and asked me if we'd coach him. So our clients do run the gamut, but they all have one thing in common: they want to lead better. And like the book sitting in front of you that John Baird and I wrote together, they want to lead with heart. So we help founders both figure out the head part of the question, which is how do we make better business decisions, and also the heart part, which is all the relational stuff.
So this
really excited to be here.
Hey, Brian, can you hold that book up just one more second? I mean, the people on radio are not seeing it, but I just want to get a close up on that book.
Zoom in.
Leading with Heart.
Yeah, and it is a bestseller, Edward. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
And so what I also want to point out to our audience is there's a lot of coaches in the world. It's a very saturated market. But what's unique about Edward and what he's done, along with John Baird, is they have created that 1% coaching firm. They are the best of the best. You're not, just hearing someone roll in with ideas. These guys are champs. They're winners. They have helped scale great companies, lead great individuals. So I'm really honored to have you here today, Edward. So thank you for being here.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
All right, so let's kick off with you, Shawn. Let's talk a little bit about mergers and acquisitions, how it relates to startups. When should a company that is, launching, scaling, it's on the napkin, it's in a certain series, wherever it is on that journey, when should a startup or a founder start thinking about mergers and acquisitions and exits? When does it start to be part of the plan?
Honestly, from day one, should actually be part of the plan if they really want to think out their business. And what I mean by that is, if you build out a business with the idea of that exit, you're building it out for all the processes, everything to be as efficient as possible, right? You're thinking, okay, how can I take what this person's doing, make it into a system? What metrics should I be tracking? How often should I track them? What's my, what the next 6 months look like? What's the next year look like? You're really thinking everything out. So from day one, you already have that in the back of your mind of, I want to build that saleable business. You're actually building the business so it's the most efficient way possible with goals in mind. And then you can take those goals if you're looking to go out and raise capital, or when you want to exit, or if something happens and you have to. You have so many more options when from day one, you're thinking about that in the back of your head.
So you said sellable. And so I often hear, is your company fundable? And so those two terms aren't too far apart in terms of how you think through your strategy. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Kind of. I mean, a fundable company and a saleable company, it means there's value to that company, right? Other people are saying, oh, what's the magic here? What does it have of value that either one, I want to acquire it, or two, I want to put money into it, see it grow and get a multiple of my money back at, for that risk that I'm happy with. So yeah, it's just basically saying that entity that you're building has value outside of just yourself.
So the overlapping word that I hear is valuable. And so it seems like you can kind of split out from there. Are we going towards the sale? Are we going towards fundability? Either way, it kind of funnels into this value proposition, or this value of the company. in the early stages, what should a startup be working on to demonstrate value? Like, what is those top 1 or 2 priorities?
It could just be, what metrics am I tracking? Am I increasing revenue? How quickly? What's my lifetime value of a customer to the cost of acquiring a customer? Is it going in the right direction or wrong direction? It could just be little milestones, like even something as simple as going out and getting feedback on your idea, just those market surveys, that has value to it. That has tremendous value to it. The co-founder that you're building the company with, or your team, that has tremendous value to it. Just the way you're building out the infrastructure at the early days, even the CRM and how you're putting data into it, that has value. All these little things that people might just take for granted, not even look at, just the basics, the foundation, that foundation, it compounds over time. So if you have everything right at the beginning, you're able to build a taller building on it.
Interesting. So organization, efficiency, systems early on is just as important to growing the company as it is to selling the company.
And let me add there's a lot of people that will take shortcuts at the beginning, and it's understandable. I mean, we all have limited bandwidth. We all have limited resources. But for example, you hire some overseas contractors to write some code for you, but you don't get any employment contracts. You don't get anything that says the IP that's created is owned by the company. Well, you put yourself at a disadvantage later when you're either raising capital or you're going to sell the company, because when they do due diligence, they're going to go, wait a second, is this code yours? Is this product yours? Is this foundation yours? Or is this someone else that, once this gets announced, could come in and either file some litigation or impede the transaction or something like that? So having those little things at the beginning could mean huge, could compound, it could escalate later on when there's real money on the table. I mean, if the company's worth nothing, no one's going to come after you because there's nothing there. It's not worth their time and effort. Mm-hmm. But it's when there's that big exit that people start talking about, that all these things from 5 years ago suddenly surface.
Interesting. So I'm going to kind of go AWOL at this point. I want to weave in Edward at this point. Now, Shawn, you're talking about the value of the company. Now, Edward, you deal a lot with founder fit, the leadership capabilities, the individual and how they're driving team, building culture. How can a early stage company, I know you, I mean, where do you focus your practice on? Is it those early stage founders, or is it later stage, or all points in between? And then when it comes to raising the value of the company and determining if a founding team or the founder himself is valuable, where do you start when it comes to raising that value of the individual?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's really interesting about what Shawn's sharing is that sounds like he's helping founders manage intellectual property risk in many ways, right? Do you own the IP? Because that's where the value is going to be. What we do is we help founders manage the human capital risk, because at the end of the day, 65% of companies that fail because of people problems, not because of IP problems, not because of marketing or product problems. It's because the founders don't get along. It's because the management team can't agree on what the strategy is. It's because they're not executing well. So as a coaching firm, our task really is to come in and help this organization build value by creating a certain amount of flow in the executive team. If they can make decisions faster, if they can execute faster, if they can get rid of interpersonal disputes that create friction, that's where our value generation comes from.
And when do they usually look to you? I mean, is it pre-seed, Series A? I mean, obviously you could just say when they can afford it. But
come in, we like to work with founders from Series A on, because at that point they've hopefully figured out the product market fit issues, and then they're dealing with scaling issues. Anything before Series A, they're still trying to figure out, is the dog going to eat the dog food? But as soon as they've got something, they know if we just pour money and resources onto this, more and more people are going to buy this. Then that's where we come in and we help them scale their leadership, scale the organization, scale their processes, and ultimately scale their culture.
So, Shawn, once they get to you, do these issues ever show up? So you may have a healthy company on paper, but then you start to see that the leadership or the culture isn't just isn't on par. These things need to be looked at individually, or together? How do you kind of flesh this out?
Oh, are you kidding? When we start doing our due diligence in the data room and start having conversations, fingers start getting pointed, people start getting blamed. This person,
The curtain gets pulled back.
oh my God, are you?
Oh, yeah.
It is ugly. Oh, this person owes me more shares, and we did this handshake years ago, and this is what it should look like, and this person's not. We'll hear everything. It gets bad, and sometimes, I mean, honestly, it'll look like, you'll have the first meeting. Things are great. You're thinking this, whatever transaction they want will happen, high probability. Meeting 2 or 3 starts looking ugly. And then after a while, you're like, wait, this company's, they're hanging on a shoestring. They're just, the numbers might look good, but they're going to fall apart like that.
Interesting.
Because of interpersonal conflict. Is that what you're saying? Because they can't get along, or somebody thinks they deserve more, or somebody feels that they're putting in more work and somebody's not pulling their weight?
That could be one of them. It could be an issue, as mentioned before, maybe a litigation that was pending, or we're not sure about this one person, or there's a lot that you never know until you start asking questions. And then once you ask those questions, it leads to other questions that lead to others. And something that on paper, the financials might look good, the CEO might look good, but then when you peel back the onion, it's pretty bad.
So you get some, Edward, you get some insight on this if you're with a company for a long period of time. Do these issues show up in the boardroom? And of course, I can hear what Shawn's saying about doing the due diligence, the war room.
I just like how when you ask, all of us are smiling because we already know
where it's going. Yeah, you can see it coming. So, Edward, do you see these problems early on from your vantage point when you're working with these companies?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a reason I have a job, right? Because every company has its issues. Every pair of founders have their disagreements. We haven't worked with one company that didn't have something that they need to unwind. I mean, that's part of the reason they call us. We do prefer to work with companies that are more like the top quartile, top decile, like things are working pretty well and they just want to add rocket fuel to it. But even those companies, even the highest performing companies, boom, I got you, rocket fuel.
Good plug.
Even the highest performing companies, they have these issues, right? The resentment, the interpersonal, as Shawn said, that deal we made 3 years ago that you never did good on, right? And the role of a coach is to come in and help the team put some of those differences aside, focus on what they can agree on, and move forward together.
So I mean, your title is you're a coach. But Shawn, I mean, you're in mergers and acquisitions, but it sounds like you've kind of put on the same hat as well, depending on when you come in.
Yes and no, in the sense that we're not hands-on. We don't go in the company as consultants or that. We look back and go, how do we package this, right? How do we create the story around this company for that transaction that they want to do? And we'll talk with them and go, okay, you're thinking this valuation, well, our analysis is kind of around here. If you want to get there, here's some value drivers. This is what we're seeing in the industry for multiples. You'll hear that quite a bit, multiples and that based on either EBITDA or revenue or whatever.
For our audience, can you tell them what EBITDA is?
Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. So if you look at the P&L, I don't want to get too technical because I feel I'm going to lose half the group here.
Including me.
But there's kind of industry standards that people will use as reference points for transactions and then give a range to it. And that, the high end or low end can be contributed to a lot of things of the company, maybe customer concentration, maybe growth, maybe a lot of these things that we can come in and have conversations with them going, hey, based on what we're seeing when we're going through your data room, based on the information you've provided, we kind of see right now this kind of range. This is kind of how we would guess the transaction could be structured based on the conversation with you. But we would defer to people like Edward and that go, listen, if where you're at now and you want to go here, maybe it'll take a year or 2 years to get. Here's some experts that you should talk to, whether it's accountants, whether it's legal, whether it's whatever, clean this up, de-risk this, not so much concentrated or whatever. We're not in there doing it. That's when we refer to the experts like Edward.
So I love this examination of the health of a company, and there's a lot of boxes to check. Let's back up a little bit, and Edward, I'm going to come to you with this as well, like how you got your insight, how you got your start. Shawn, where did this all begin for you? You have done business all over the world. You had your own company. Take us back into what got you into startup, and then led us to here.
So my journey to investment banking, literally whenever I talk to either investment bankers or private equity guys or family, whoever it is, they look at me and they just shake their heads and like, are you kidding? You looked on your LinkedIn. Were you a theater minor? Wait, what is going on here? So, I also did mechanical engineering undergrad, for the record. So
Check that box.
got to check that one. But no, I lived overseas about 8 years. A lot of that time was in mainland China. I started a couple businesses. One did okay. Sold it to my business partner. Came back to the U.S. Really was not employable, but startups loved me. The startup ecosystem loved me. I got involved with an angel group, just screening deals for them. I went from just kind of helping out to then the investment director. Fast forward a few years later, I was president temporarily of the group. But in that time, I was making introductions to overseas Chinese groups that were setting up operations in Silicon Valley, and this one group that had 20 years of connections. And because of that, I got an offer from a couple of the groups. One I thought was really good, and I worked with them for a number of years of helping companies from Silicon Valley set up in tech parks in China. And through that, I got introduced to a lot of investment bankers, a lot of investors, made a couple of intros. And I mean, one thing we haven't talked about, with having a podcast and having a radio, the network you build. Over the years, I was able to build a really strong network and able to foster and maintain those relationships. And then that pivoted and segued into investment banking, because it was really what I was doing there at packaging companies, getting ready for these real road shows overseas. Now it was just more formal. Okay, this is what's actually, it's not a biz dev, you're an investment banker, you're helping, you're at the table for these transactions, start to end with the team.
I love that. And so you've made building a community, making connections, building relationships a priority, and it has paid off for you personally as well as professionally.
Without a doubt.
What has been kind of your strategy around that? I mean, you've led networks, you have a podcast. Talk a little bit about that strategy and why it's important. And again, I'll frame it for our audience. I'm big on go-to-market strategies that are effective, but it seems to be this emerging idea of go-to-community strategies that are really effective as well. So talk a little bit about how you look at building connections and networking.
It depends how deep you want to go into it. For me, for example, I'll just take the podcast, for example. I normally have about 7 touch points between when I get introduced to the person and when the interview goes live. And I do that very strategically in the sense that a warm introduction comes in. They're all warm at this point. After episode 30, they've all been warm introductions. Have a 30-minute Zoom call with them, exchange some emails back and forth, have the interview where beginning and end, there's time allocated for small talk, follow up with some emails, and follow up with a coffee meeting or Zoom or that, where, through that space of time at the very end, I got to know Shawn pretty well. He's a nice guy. We've had several conversations over the span of a few months. I know I can trust him. And then just keep those relationships warm over time. And when it comes to kind of communities, I always try to build that community, whether it's a mastermind group. I had a podcast mastermind group for a while there, or other little groups I've tried over time. Like right now, I'm on the board for Association Corporate Growth, ACG Silicon Valley, along with a group leader of Palo Alto 3 for Provisors. And I've noticed it's just a little bit more work to be that group leader, but the payoff is 10x.
Yeah, and I got to admit, in the beginning, I looked to you and would ask myself, what would Shawn do in this situation in terms of building community?
And that's when your career went downhill.
And that's when everything changed for me. So Edward, I want to look to you because you have a remarkable journey as well, up to writing this book with John Baird, Leading with Heart. Where did you get your start? Because you've got very interesting story, as does Shawn, about what got you into coaching.
You know, it's funny. If you look back at my story on paper, it doesn't make any sense at all. I'm the only one who understands the through line. So my first job out of college was actually in nonprofit management. I worked in running a nonprofit organization in New Mexico for a little while. Got picked up by the local Democratic Party and worked in politics for a number of years. And then spent about 5 years traveling around the world with James Carville, who's the Raging Cajun, a famous Democratic strategist, and worked in a number of presidential elections overseas. So actually working for heads of foreign nations in their elections in places in South America, Africa, Eastern Europe, et cetera. And after a good run at that, starting to feel like it was a little too dangerous, needed to come back to the United States, I moved to Silicon Valley. And I spent 8 years mainly working in the clean tech and solar industries. We were building some of the largest solar plants in the world, and thought it would be fun to get a mid-career MBA. So I did the Wharton program there in San Francisco, and sitting at the lunch table, just chatting about my life and my career, my classmates started asking me to coach them, which I thought was the weirdest thing because I was not a coach. This is about 10, 12 years ago. And one woman, Julia, I'll never forget it. She said, "You've been coaching me all semester. I just haven't paid you. And my company has budget for that. So why don't I put you on the payroll and I'll start paying you as my coach?" And it started like that, very organically. And we've actually at the company now used something similar as a screen for coaches who we recruit, because my business partner, John Baird, it was Steve Jobs at Apple who found John when he was a business school professor at San Jose State. And Jobs said, "Why don't you come in and help us build Apple University?" This is back in the 90s. So both of us were recruited. John has a much more auspicious recruitment story than I do. But both of us were recruited into coaching, and we look for other people who were recruited by their peers into coaching. It seems to be like a good sign, right? That there's something special happening that other people saw. Hey, you should try this. So about 12 years ago, I tried my hand at coaching, and about 9 years ago, John and I partnered up and started working with startups, and I've been running Velocity ever since.
And so what were some of those early indicators that you had this organic ability to drive people to higher levels as a coach? I mean, is it just talking, I mean, this is a part of it. Is it talking about values? Is it talking about business structure? What do you, is it communication? What do you think were those early signs in terms of your personality and your superpower that were evident as a good coach?
I think I'm just relentless at giving unsolicited advice. You're not going to wear that shirt, are you? No, I'm kidding. I think it was that, and this was reflected back to me by one of my professors, that I just have maybe more than the average person, a very high gift of empathy. So I can really hear what's going on behind the scenes. I can understand what people are thinking. I can understand the dynamics in a group, sometimes better than the group can. And it's that insight, it's that ability to come in and say, this is what I think is going on here. Does that sound right? And people look at each other and go, actually, yeah, that is what's going on. And we didn't have words for it. That's what I do particularly well. I know that's what John Baird does really well. And we like to work with coaches who do that really well also.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the insights that you share in Leading with Heart. And it talks about 5 conversations that unlock creativity, purpose, and results. Give us a little insight so that our listeners will go out and buy the book. And
oh yeah, well, thank you. I mean, the big idea, Brian, is that we should be having more emotionally authentic conversations in the workplace. That's the main takeaway from the book. Right. There's a lot of...
That sounds super easy from where I'm standing, but I know that people, excuse me for butting in here, Edward, but I mean, people are so resistant to that. A, they're not in touch with their feelings. B, they're just terrified of confessing their feelings. And C, they're all trying to climb the corporate ladder. And so confessing your feelings is surely the way to get yourself kicked off a team.
Yeah. Well, that's why we wrote the book, Brian. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because you're right. It is really hard. And we dedicate about half a chapter in the book into why leading with heart is so hard, because for a lot of the things you just said, people feel like they're taking a risk. They feel like they're going to be taken out. They feel like someone's going to use what they would share in an emotionally authentic way against them. And that's why the process really has to start from leadership, right? If leadership comes in, if the CEO, the founder, the executive teams comes in and says, all right, we're going to model emotionally relevant and emotionally authentic leadership, then it can cascade down through the organization. If you have a first year manager who's coming in and I'm going to start leading with heart, and this is like a toxic workplace, it's going to be really hard. That person's probably going to get pushed out of the organization. And it's why in a lot of our work, we like to start at the top of the organization. We do maybe 98% of our coaching starts with the CEO, and then we work down through the organization. We call it full stack coaching, when we get the CEO, the C-suite, the vice presidents, the directors all into our coaching program, because then we can really model, we could shape and mold the culture of that entire company.
So where do you begin with that conversation? Do they come with you? Is there an intervention? Is there a moment where they just wake up and things are falling apart and they come running to you saying the house is on fire? Because what I realize and see in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of silos. People are experts in their silo, and then to come out of that is a little bit too vulnerable. How do you encourage those conversations outside the silo?
Yeah. I mean, it really has to start with some self-awareness from leadership, right? We very rarely take those assignments when, let's say, an investor will come to us and say, this is a dumpster fire of a company. Will you help us fix it? That doesn't sound like sexy work. That's not fun work, right? But if the CEO comes and says, you know what, things are going okay. They're going pretty well. We know that we could be doing a lot better. Right, that's a really fun organization to work with. They have some self-awareness. They're getting ahead of the program. They're investing in preventative health measures as opposed to everything's broken. Will you help us fix it? Right.
Yeah.
So it takes some self-awareness. And normally, what they're saying is things are good, but the way we're working isn't working. You know, there's still too much friction. I see Dariusz nodding over there, like he knows what I'm talking about. You've worked in that company, right? Where like it's okay, but it could be a lot better. I know. So why don't we just get honest with each other, right? Because the companies that have the most honest conversations, they have what we call constructive conflict. They can take the gloves off, they get in there, they get in the ring, they say what really needs to be said, and then they get to the truth faster, right? It's the companies where everyone's got their cards close to their chest, they're kind of monitoring, they're slowly figuring out, who's on whose side, and they're playing politics with each other. They never get to the truth, right? They never make the decision. They never make the big leap. And it's those companies that can get really honest. They build trust. They lead with heart. They get to the truth faster, and they beat their competition.
There's one thing that I found really fascinating in the book. I want to come back to it, but it's about the founders' backstory. Like, do they have scars in their lives that has helped them build their resilience? I'm going to come back to that one, but Dariusz, I want to bring you into the conversation because we've done all these, had all these discussions around startups, and there was a point there where Edward identified that you resonated with in early stage and building culture. What stood out to you from what Edward was saying?
Ironically, it wasn't the startup, because I'm listening to all these themes, and what's resonating is this happens at big, very mature, incredibly successful companies, right? And I'm sure you come into those situations all the time, and that's what you're fixing, right? It's not working. And I find that initial person who puts themselves out there and leads with trust, trusts others first, is authentic, is humble, deals with reality, faces facts, escalates problems, works with others to solve it. Like, that's when real communication, connection really starts happening. And I've seen that at the highest levels where that doesn't happen. There's this complete lack of self-awareness, empathy. They think they're doing all the right things, but they're not saying all the right things. They're not walking the talk on the behavior that you're talking about. And so, I was listening to you talking about the M&A scenario and assessing the founders and the team. It's interesting because, like you said, Brian, Everyone gets promoted as the expert. But at some point, you're part of a team beyond your expertise. The C-suite is not one expert. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a collaboration of experts. But to run the whole company, you have to be multidisciplined. And a lot of executives and individuals who start companies haven't been cross-trained.
Interesting.
Right? And so they don't know the perspective of the marketer. They don't know the perspective of the product or the CTO or whoever. And I found, I was a swimmer in college, and 400 IM was my, best event. And I was really good at putting everything together. I do okay in the butterfly and the backstroke and the breaststroke and the freestyle, but IM was like where it came together. I've had the opportunity of being in lots of different roles. I've been in product. I've led engineering teams. And so having that empathy of those other functions helps you manage and lead. And then back to your, you need problem solving skills and common language in order to solve those problems. And I think what you've identified sometimes is like they don't have common ways of solving problems and communicating and getting through and pushing through. And that basically creates a discount on the company valuation at some point.
Now take this from the theoretical to the practical. You come from a lot of experience. So this is a good point to give your intro. And
Try
then,
not to throw people under the bus.
Yeah. So just to kind of bookmark where I'm at, I saw you wanted to add something, Shawn. And then Edward, I wanted to talk to you again about the background of a CEO and their scars in their life that build resilience. But for now, Dariusz, give a little intro about what brought you here. You've got a ton of experience in corporate with the fractional CMO, and now you have Rocket Vodka. Tell us a little bit about that run up, and then give us intro into Rocket Vodka.
I mean, look, my parents were they escaped from Poland back in the communist days, and we didn't have any money, and I didn't know anything about business, and neither did they. So I didn't have any role models, but somehow I ended up running a nonprofit organization early in my career.
Oh, wow.
Called ISEC. It's the world's largest student-run organization right out of college. I had no clue what I was doing, and I was way in over my head and, trying to figure out how to manage things. But I ended up in GE's financial management program and got my ass kicked in finance, a marketer who, ended up in finance. But through that cross-training, I started learning empathy for other functions and other teams. And but yeah, I've had a career in marketing and product and management roles at Netscape and AOL and Microsoft, Yahoo and Verizon. And through that lens, I've seen lots of different things. But these were all large companies, relatively speaking. So I had this entrepreneurial itch at some point. And so I was always entrepreneurial inside of the companies, but not on my own. So I had a career break a few years ago. And I decided, well, I've got this concept that I've been playing around with for a long time. And I had these childhood memories of my dad making moonshine from apples. Can I do something? Can I make something? And I just started. I read a book called Just Start, Boston College professors, and just started chipping away. And within the 9 months between leaving one company and joining Yahoo, I got the idea far enough along where I could work on it nights and weekends. And we launched the product a year after I joined Yahoo. But that's been the journey. It's been basically hustling.
And I'm going to look to you, Edward, because that's exactly where I wanted to go with this. You see remarkable founders who do well, have this backstory. I have had a ton of experience with these founders who've immigrated, who come from broken homes. And you talk about that in the book. Why is this story, this cocktail of life experiences so important as a quality founder?
Well, I mean, it is the resistance in our lives that teaches us resilience, right? And resilience is the number one most important factor that is an early indicator of founder success, right? Someone who, as they say, will push through walls, right? Someone who will just keep going when it's really hard. Because as Elon Musk said, starting a company is akin to eating glass. It's just really hard. Everything is resistance. And if you're the kind of person who quits when it gets a little difficult, you're never going to be a great founder. And the people who are least likely to quit are the people who have been pushing through walls their entire lives, right? So that's why for a lot of founders are like that, and also early teams, founders, knowing where they come from, they often screen for people with a chip on their shoulder, people who had something to prove, people who came from nothing and have built something. Pedigree became something that founders started screening for in Silicon Valley only in recent years. And I think it's actually been to the detriment of the quality of companies and company building, because it's really the people who will just hack and figure it out on their own. They're the best employees. They're the best leaders.
I love that. Shawn, I know you had something on the tip of your tongue earlier, so I wanted to come back to that.
Well, I'm not sure to circle back right now. It
Circle back.
kind of seems like derailing the progress of the conversation, but I wanted to emphasize a little bit about the founders and the teams. And well, one, I mean, for a lot of acquisitions, what happens is the team gets to a point where they don't think they can take it any farther. Right? The founders are that they're out of their comfort zone and they don't want to grow into that new role, that new responsibility. And they go, listen, I've gone as far as I can. It's now time for me to sell the company. Or if they're raising growth capital, it's okay, how can we convince these investors that you're going to grow into all the capital that they're going to put in this company, and you're going to take those new roles? How are you going to develop and expand your boundaries? And how can we package that in the story? So a lot of what we do in these transactions go back to the founders, their comfort level, their grit, how open they are to expand their capabilities, and the teams around them.
I love that. Brian, you're looking at me.
Yes, I'd like to take just a quick break to do a station identification and let some of our sponsors get some words in for our listeners.
Wonderful. You're listening to Silicon Valley Impact on Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 FM in Los Gatos. We'll be right back. All right, so we're continuing the conversation with Shawn, Dariusz, and Edward. Edward, I definitely want to jump in a little bit. We're kind of bouncing around here, but I definitely want to walk into the 5 principles that you talk about in the book, Leading with Heart by Edward Sullivan and John Baird. Give us a little overview of those 5 conversational pieces that unlock creativity, purpose, and results.
Well, Brian, when we were writing the book, we were thinking, how do we back people into what essentially will feel like a coaching experience with us, right? What do we do as coaches? We ask powerful questions. That's what we at least aspire to do. I don't always ask the best questions, but I do my best. So what we did is we structured the book around 5 essential questions that would create conversations in the workplace. It starts with, what do you need to be at your best, right? Like, we need to have the foundation set. So we think of the needs question as putting fuel in the fuel tank, right? What do you need to feel safe, to have honest conversations, to feel creative, to do your best work? The next conversation is, what fears might be holding you back, right? This is where fear is probably the number one quiet killer in a workplace. It creates all of the negative behavior from people, right? All of the fights, all the toxic behavior, all of the politicking and like not giving each other credit. It all comes from fear, right? So if we can have honest conversations around fear, we can hopefully break through. We get rid of all that friction. The next conversation is, what really drives you? What desires do you really have? Are you here to make money? Are you here for power? Are you here to win? Are you here to learn, right? Let's just get honest about what really motivates you. We think of this as like the gas pedal question. We've already put tank into gas. We cleared everything off the roadways with the fear question. And now, how hard are we going to be pressing down on the gas pedal? The last 2 questions are around your gifts and your purpose. Because if you've lined it up right and you figured out your needs, you've addressed your fears, you really know what motivates you, then you're in a great position to express your gifts in service of your higher purpose. And those 5 questions together constitute leading with heart.
I love it. And so we talked a little bit about the pain point of particular founders in the series that they're in. What are...
I lost your mic.
My mic is... So mic's off.
Now you're back. Now you're back.
Okay. Where do we do it messy here? We just keep going. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so we all start panicking. Brian's looking around.
No, there was just a glitch in the matrix. I don't know what that was. I was like, whoa.
Everyone's eyes got real big, right? That was like a real quick hit of coffee right there. Talk a little bit about, Edward, about the top 3 pain points. I know we were talking earlier about it, like when should we call in the coach? When's a good point? But if you could put it in a short bio, a short summary, what are some of the top 3 pain points of companies, founders before they come to you?
Yeah, I think the number one pain point is putting out fires all the time, right? A lot of CEOs think like, I'm the number one fireman in this company. I should be putting out fires all the time. And that's actually an indicator of a really poorly run company, actually, right? Because what's happening is your team is afraid of telling you when you smell smoke, when they smell smoke. So you're always putting out fires, right? If you tell people, only bring me don't bring me problems, only bring me solutions, then people are just going to sit on the complex little problems they have, and then they're going to become big problems you need to deal with. So that's the number one. The second one is when the team really is not making decisions. If we have teams that are stuck on making decisions, it means they have trouble getting to the truth together. So they just avoid the difficult conversations, which ends up avoiding the big decisions. And I would say the third is just turnover. Right? If you've got a lot of people leaving the company, it means there's an undercurrent, there's something happening that you're not addressing, that you're not fully aware of.
I can't tell you how many companies I've gone into, and you have those conversations with your directors and managers and just your employees and staff, and there's just no venue or process typically for them to be heard.
Yeah.
They see the problems, they see the smoke, like you said. I love that. I'm going to use that. But there's no productive, safe space for them to contribute. But when you let them contribute, when you do the audits of the customer journey, which I do a lot of, and you hear them out and you hear their ideas, even if you say we can't fund that at the end of that process, they have been heard. They've had an opportunity to vent. They've had an opportunity to show you data that says this is why this is a problem. And it's so much better in terms of how fast you can execute once you have those conversations behind you. So it's a crucial thing. And so those are the smoke signals, but how do you make sure that you're smelling the smoke?
Yeah.
I guess.
What I hear you saying, Dariusz, is that this is a crucial thing, and Edward, I hear you saying the same. But in so many instances, I hear people who work in corporate who are telling me that this doesn't exist. There is no mechanism present whatsoever, no hope of that mechanism being present. And also I hear stories of CEOs who just kind of almost go rogue, right? And I think this is built on Silicon Valley legend, where you're supposed to be this hard-charging, driving force. You're up at 4 a.m., you're in the swimming pool by 5:15, you're sleeping on the floor at night, and you're supposed to be this unstoppable force. And I think that they turn around then and expect everybody behind them to have that same drive, passion, and commitment.
And we start relying on platforms too. So like the feedback box, or the employee engagement culture survey, those are, they have a place, but you have to make that part of the daily routine.
Yeah.
Like the daily process has to be about having these kinds of conversations.
So who starts that? Who starts facilitating that conversation? Who raises
it really has to start at the top. Like the CEO needs to be actively seeking dissent and rewarding it when he or she hears it, So we talk a lot about the CEO needs to reward the behaviors they want to see more of, right? So when someone raises their hand and says, I'm going to take a risk and say, like, there's this problem over in department XYZ. No one's dealing with it because no one knows how to solve the problem, but nobody wanted to bring it to your attention. The CEO needs to say, thank you so much. I need to hear more about problems that are intractable, that people don't know how to fix, that we need 5 of the greatest minds in the company to fix, as opposed to don't bring me your problems, only bring me solutions.
So Edward, does there need to be a devil's advocate in the room? It's almost like if everyone's taking one position or afraid to take a different position, they need to reposition themselves. There needs to be that devil's advocate in the room. How do we encourage that? Or maybe reprioritize the order of feedback, where you start talking to the individual who has the least amount of experience, as opposed to talking to the person who has the most experience. Because if the CEO speaks first, then it's going to kind of tell the least senior person, I'm not going to challenge that. How do you build that culture?
Yeah. I mean, it really does come down to leadership learning how to lead. And like the best leaders speak last, right? Bezos would always speak last in his meetings. Mark Zuckerberg, whatever you think of Facebook and Meta, would often speak last in his meetings. And it's the people who make space for dissent, who make space for disagreement, for conflict. Those are the folks that experience a faster arrival at the truth, right? Like what you said, should someone be appointed as a devil's advocate? Absolutely. At the beginning of a decision-making process, we recommend to all of our founders that they designate one person in the room to pick apart every decision we make. What's the reason we shouldn't do this? Why is this not going to work? Not to be negative, but so that we're addressing the full spectrum of what could happen, what the risks are, as opposed to just getting into groupthink.
So we have Marianne Becker in here every fourth Tuesday to really showcase women in leadership, women who are founders, women who are really sitting at the table. And we're trying to be a bigger advocate for women in startup. How do we start making more space? I don't even know what the right word, more space, more opportunity to integrate a more diverse startup culture, board culture, executive ecosystem for women? How do we become those advocates for diversity? Edward, I'm going to look to you first because I know you've got a very wide client list that could speak to this.
I mean, I think you already said it. It's about making space, right? It's about very purposefully making space for more voices in the room, right? So oftentimes the conversation will be led by the loudest, most aggressive people in the room. And it's up to the leader, the facilitator of the conversation to say, thank you very much, Jim. I think we've heard a lot from you today. I'd like to hear from Nancy right now. I'd like to hear from Josh, right? Who's a little bit of a introvert and doesn't often speak up. Like, you need to call these people out. Or sometimes you'll often hear in a big tussle, like everyone's kind of like trying to get heard, and the quietest person in the room will say something really insightful and say, wait, what was that, Roger? I heard Roger say something. Roger, will you please repeat that? Stacy, would you repeat that, please? Because we need to bring those people to the fore and champion those quiet voices, because often they're not heard on their own.
I just want to add to that, which is, it's not just those quiet voices. There are different personalities in a room too, right?
Yeah.
And some people just aren't comfortable speaking out. And even if you ask them for feedback, it's going to be awkward, and they might not be able to articulate exactly how they're feeling and what the problem is in a way that's confident or accurate or whatnot. So one of the things that I do in these audits that I'm talking about is we go into Google Docs, and we work collaboratively and have everyone on a cross-functional team around amplification of the brand as being one of the parts of the customer journey, for example. And everyone's just typing stuff into the Google Doc, raw, unfiltered. It's not polished. It is what it is. It's facts, it's opinions, it's problems, so that people who aren't comfortable speaking out, they can still have a voice and be heard, because we go through those documents, all those comments, every single one of them, we go through and review it with the whole team. And we will then say, well, John, you said so-and-so. What did you mean by that? Tell us more. And because it's been safe to contribute that content, it becomes safe to talk about that content.
Okay. Shawn, talk a little bit about the voices that you are grabbing onto in Silicon Valley. You said you're in over 200 episodes in now with the Silicon Valley Impact, which is amazing. You spoke to some very amazing people. What are some insights over that journey that facilitate leadership, that facilitate diversity, and hearing those voices that aren't usually amplified? I know that's kind of a abstract question, but where do you kind of land with that?
Ooh, I mean, after so many episodes, you kind of get a feel for the ones that I think everything that has been said by Edward and Dariusz in this interview here, this conversation about that grit, that always want to learn, always listening to all the voices in the room and asking people to speak up for ideas and sharing and goal setting and working towards. You see all those in these the leaders of the successful companies. And it's kind of odd. At this point, you can almost sit down with someone and know their true, like, I don't want to say their true potential, but kind of that caliber where they're playing at, just based on the interaction, the rapport that they build almost instantly, the way they hold themselves. I think that's one of the things that has been the most surprising thing over the years of doing these interviews and talking to this many people.
Yeah, I truly believe that the best product doesn't always win. It's really how unique that leadership is. And you've brought out some great leaders on your podcast. You have introduced me to some great people. You're a great person. Tell how our listeners can get a hold of you and learn more about what you're doing.
Best is connect with me on LinkedIn at Shawn Flynn, ShawnFlynn. And if you're in Silicon Valley, June 7th, we're hosting a huge event in Berkeley, California. Stop by, ping Brian if you want a promo code for a ticket. We'll create like a Silicon Valley Impact ticket or something like that.
What's the name of the event?
Create the Future. We have
Create the Future in Berkeley. And what are the dates again, Brian? Shawn?
June 7th, the entire day, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Some of the speakers include the brand new Chancellor of UC Berkeley, Fiona Ma, Treasurer of California, Head of Homeland Security Science Technology Department for Silicon Valley. There's a huge list. We're bringing tech, government, community, and art in one location.
Excellent. And one other question I want to ask for Dariusz is, where can we get Rocket Vodka at this point? Do you have distribution? Are you all over the Bay Area, the state, the country?
We're in this interesting between seed and A series company. We have customers all over Northern California. So easiest is just go to rocketvodka.com. There's a map there for where our launch pads are, and you can buy it online.
And finally, Edward, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, please be in touch. I'm on the social medias at Edward L. Sullivan, and our company our company website is velocitycoaching.com.
All right. And also check out the book Leading with Heart by Edward Sullivan and John Baird. I want to thank all my guests today for being amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making a big impact. And of course, Brian, thank you so much. And to all who are watching, thank you for joining Silicon Valley Impact. Please connect with us on LinkedIn as well as Instagram. And once again, this is on Pirate Cat Radio, KPCR 92.9 in Los Gatos and beyond. We will see you all next week. Cheers.